Thank you. Okay, welcome to the show, and let's meet our star-studded panel. First, prior to his 25 years as journalist and co-editor on 60 Minutes, my first guest was assigned 2 tours of duty covering the Vietnam War, the recipient of 9 Emmy Awards. Morley Safer came down the hall. Thank you, Morley.
Thank you.
All right. He is the lead singer of the rock group Kiss, a CD of covers called Kiss My Ass, and a video of the same name, which Morley appears in. Strangely, I don't know. That is odd, but Paul Stanley is here. Hey, how you doing? Thank you. Okay. All right. You two have a lot in common. Save it for after the show. Now, the director of the Council on Culture and Community, our returning champion. She's amassed more than $10,000 in cash and prizes. Richardson, Higgins. Hey, baby. How are you? And a former assistant district attorney in New York and the current chief prosecuting attorney for the environmental group Hudson River Keeper. He's also a licensed master falconer, Mr. Robert Kennedy, Jr. Hey, Robert. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having
me. Well, this is the kind of show I feel like I've already done my job just by introducing all these great people, but we are going to ask a question. We had a question we've wanted to ask a long time about journalism. We thought this was the right night, and it saved us some work because Robert, you have actually written this question for us better than we ever could. This is a letter that you wrote to New York Magazine. It appeared several weeks ago in response to a book that was published about Ethel Kennedy, your mother, and I will just read the end of it because it asked the question, as I say, better than we ever could. And, you know, journalism today plays fast and loose with facts, and you dispute some of them and then say, I recall when journalism was an honorable profession, and journalists asked, is it true, rather than is it libel? The recent ethical devolution confronts journalists with the executioner's query, if the profession demands indecency to be successful, then must decent people abandon the profession? Morley Safer. This is your profession.
A couple of things. It's clearly a lawyer's letter. I don't understand a word of it.
Yes, you do.
Secondly, by the general accepted standards of honor, journalism has never been an honorable profession. Certainly not among the politicians. It's never been considered honorable as long as this country's been around.
But don't you think it's gotten worse?
Gotten worse?
Yeah.
No, it's gotten more. It's gotten much bigger than it's ever been. And any time you have bigness of the kind we have now, particularly in television, it's going to be polite about it, vary in quality. And but there's always been junk journalism. There's always been quality journalism, and it's not that much different right now.
But I mean, your colleague, Dan Rather, who's right here in the building, you know, he blasted people for covering the O.J. trial. I mean, his own colleagues.
Well, if I may, journalists used to be reporters, and somewhere around Watergate, they suddenly became journalists. They had a
right.
long and rich and colorful tradition of being anything but a decent profession, and in fact, that's probably what made them so good as reporters. If I could disagree with one of the premises of your letter, it seems to me that actually they used to ask, is it libel, because there used to be libel laws that actually worked before the Sullivan decision. And that the truth issue now is more of a cover. Where the debate has shifted, I think, is that we have lost Abe Rosenthal's test of does it cause unnecessary harm. There's no more concept anymore that there are some things that are private. There's no concept anymore that there are some things that we don't necessarily have a right to know. And one of the interesting things is the special that's going on right now on FDR. I mean, we are living in a world where Reagan's polyps are spread all over the paper, as opposed to FDR,
I think we could have lived without that phrase. Well, you are some smart chick, but we have to take a break, and when we do, we're going to get to this side of the panel in just a minute.
If you'd like to be a member of our studio audience, call 212-512-8959.
Okay, welcome back. And Robert Kennedy Jr., when we last left, you were characteristically being challenged by a Republican, and we give you the chance to rebut.
Well, I think I accept some of that. The difference that I see from, at the time, like I would say pre-Watergate and post-Watergate, is that at some point, journalism, like other professions, like the law, is supposed to do at our best, the objective is to find the truth. And now, more and more, you see the objective seems to be to titillate people.
The objective has never been to find the truth in law. Never.
Well, I'm talking about the ideal.
The objective in criminal law is to convict.
No. A prosecutor's duty is to see that justice is done. It is not to convict. It is not to win. It is not to convict. It's to see that justice is done. I'm talking about the ideal in every profession at its best. In medicine and law and journalism, we're supposed to find the truth. It's a search, or history, or whatever. It's a search for the truth. Let me just give you an example about some of the background of this letter. This book was written with a series of interviews of people who didn't know my mother.
Right.
No member of the Kennedy family was interviewed. Most of the statements were taken from a woman whose name is Patricia Seton Lawford, who masquerades as my aunt, Patricia Lawford. She changed her name. She married my former uncle, Peter Lawford, on his deathbed a month before he died, 11 years after his divorce.
It's not been much of a honeymoon.
No. But she's made a career of giving interviews about my family, who she's never met any member of other than Peter. And this book was largely based on a series of interviews with her, and she is protected from libel laws because she can claim that she got information from Peter Lawford. Therefore, the author of this book could print those things, and then the New York Magazine could reprint those statements and be protected from any kind of libel challenge. And there was I don't think, having talked to the editors of the magazine, I don't believe that there was ever any intention that they thought they were printing something that was true.
Right. And I mean, I have to weigh in with you. I really think it is different in 20 years. 20 years, 30 years ago, there were not books. There's another one written called The Last Brother, where, Joe McGinnis's book, about...
Right, well, that doesn't pretend to be. It even says, there's a disclaimer at the beginning that says...
the purpose of tabloid journalism to titillate. And I think if it's taken as entertainment, I mean, when you go to the store and you get the Star or the Enquirer, unfortunately, a lot of that stuff is true. We may want to say it's not true.
I remember
these people are pretending they are way above.
I remember when
you've been
people were
in line at Kmart and you look over somebody's shoulder and there's a picture of you in the newspaper and your girlfriend is telling why she's leaving you.
But I remember when it was...
And it was because you had a big star over your eye.
I remember when people were embarrassed to be caught reading the People section of Time magazine.
Yes.
And now, there's People
magazine.
magazine. It's an entire industry, and it's an industry that appeals to people's prurient interests.
So what
it doesn't
are you
elevate.
suggesting?
It doesn't
So what are you
inspire.
suggesting?
If you
Are you doing journalism
renounce
differently than you were 20 years ago?
No, not much differently than I was doing 20 years ago. I mean, I wouldn't have covered O.J. then, and I'm not going to cover him now.
Yes, but Diane Sawyer does, and people, whether you like it or not, people put you and Diane Sawyer in the same kind of league as big league, serious journalists. Come on, that's true. And she does it, and I think that's a lot more insidious than hard copy when Diane Sawyer goes over there.
I think that Diane Sawyer would probably admit that it was not necessarily her finest hour.
But then why did she do it?
Ratings? Or the assumption that there were ratings.
So you're saying she's a ratings whore?
No.
This is the point.
Well, you can say that about anyone in television.
Well, let me just tell you.
All right, you're a ratings whore. You're a ratings whore. You're all ratings whore.
Something that illustrates. I talked to Christiane Amanpour the other day, who's a foreign journalist for CNN. And she used to be a domestic journalist. And she said, and I was asking her because she's renegotiating her contract. And I said, are you going to come back and cover domestic news? And she said, no, I have too much self-respect. The game has changed. If you want to cover domestic news today, you have to cover O.J. And she considers herself a journalist, not a gossip. Ergo, she feels that the only place that she can exercise her profession and have self-respect is by covering foreign affairs. That is a big change.
But isn't the dilemma what sells? And obviously, there's a market for that, otherwise it wouldn't be out there. The problem with the way O.J. has been covered is that Nicole, the victim, is put on trial.
Yes.
What we have to find out through those papers is, did she deserve this? I think it's just the slant that's wrong. But there's obviously a market for that.
Okay. I have to take a break. We'll be back. Okay, let me continue this with a somewhat related topic, which is the movie Quiz Show. Did you anybody see the movie Quiz Show? It's an entertaining movie. Did you see it? Okay. Were you probably were there for? I'm not trying to. I'm not saying you're older than.
I wrote all the questions.
Okay. Hey, look, Mike Wallace is the really old guy on that show. Okay. But you probably, I mean, Russell Baker wrote a column where he said, you know what, this thing about the quiz show being such a big surprise, he said, anybody with half a brain who lived through that knew it was fake. And then Robert Redford has been criticized because he made a movie where he changed a lot of the facts, composites, and here he is saying, well, the industry played fast and loose with the facts, but that's what he was doing with the same thing. Charles Van Doren has been in hiding since 1959. If you're out there, Charles, I just want to say, Ollie North lied to Congress. He's running for the Senate. Okay, I mean, Marion Barry, you know, what, doing crack at hotel rooms, going to be the mayor of the Capitol? I mean, really, honey, come out of hiding. What you did is not that awful.
You know, it may make an interesting point that relates to the other subject, and
Yes.
that is fantasy journalism, if we can call what you detest so much, can barely keep up with reality. Just what you described. You have a convicted, quote-unquote, liar running for the Senate. You have a convicted dope user running for mayor of Washington, will probably win.
Yeah.
So it's the gap isn't all that great.
Mark Twain summed that up very well. The full quotation, which most people don't know, is truth is stranger than fiction, which they know. But he continues to say, has to be. That's because fiction has to stick to possibilities. Truth doesn't. Which,
I would like to see you backstage at his conference. I would like to see what would happen.
There's, at some place, there's a distinction between gossip and journalism and legitimate things to cover. And at some places they merge, and then you have to make judgment choices. But you know, at St. Augustine, in his Confessions, listed gossip.
St. Augustine.
Well, I don't know how he.
Whether you're in the Catholic or Protestant
I'm not.
Morley,
I'm
you're not that old.
But he listed gossip as among the most heinous of sins, and because it doesn't elevate, it doesn't inspire, it harms the people who are its targets. And at some point, journalists or people who call themselves journalists have to decide whether they are gossips or whether they're journalists.
But we live in a very, very tricky world.
Yeah, but every profession is tricky. Everything,
No,
every choice we make is a moral choice.
I'm talking
ultimately.
about an element that involves journalism and...
Can I get anybody some water?
You gotta fight for your time on this show. No, I'm serious.
No, but the people who condemn this kind of journalism are often victims, I agree, but they sought out their kind of publicity originally, including members of your own family. You can't, once you put yourself in that position where you want us.
But I'm not,
and you
I'm
want
not disturbed about what
everybody
You
to
really
love
I'm
you,
not
running
disturbed.
for
Listen,
public
I'm not-
office is seeking publicity?
And also, I'm not complaining about anything that happened in my own family. Here's what I'm complaining about. My father, when I grew up, did not let us watch TV except for the news. This year, I made a deal with my son. I said I would get him a boat that he wanted, a small boat, if he didn't watch any TV except for the news for a year. He's watched 1 year of news, and what he knows about is O.J. And that is a really sad thing.
And how is he enjoying the Queen Mary?
Well, I would...
All right, when we come back, Paul Stanley has something to say.
Got a problem with any of this? Well, write to us at Politically Incorrect, 514 West 57th Street, New York, New York, 10019.
Okay, somehow we've gotten into a discussion of my old 45s, but now Paul Stanley.
It's just really interesting. You know, I sit here, and you've probably had your share of celebrities on who think that once they became famous, they had a tremendous infusion of expertise in areas they knew nothing about before. And I'm here pretty much like the people here, and I think we're missing a point where you started was about whether or not there was a loss of innocence.
Yes.
When people realized that the game shows were fixed. And that's something that happens all the time. The fact of the matter is, all the people here have to deal day to day with a loss of innocence every time they see the Bill of Rights thrown out, or they see lawyers who make a mockery of the legal system. You know?
Well, hey, I mean, when Kiss took off their makeup,
that's
that
right.
was a loss of innocence for many
when it
people.
becomes more important whether you can get somebody off on a technicality,
right,
whether or not they're guilty, becomes secondary. That's what makes these people lose their innocence. It's not a matter of trivializing it with a game show. We live it every day.
You're absolutely right. And I think that America didn't have a loss of innocence. That's part of the hubris of Hollywood, that after Tammany Hall and, you know, Benedict Arnold and everything else we've been through, that somehow a quiz show would make us change our perspective. If anything, I would argue that there's a difference between naivete and innocence, and the fact that we can still worry about our innocence, that you can on 60 Minutes worry about these issues, that your father could hold hearings, that you in fact are posing these questions and Robert Kennedy is writing these movies, means that the fact that we're worrying about this, which is something they would never do in Europe, means that we're still capable of virtue, that we can still expect better of ourselves, and that's hopeful.
The genuine loss of innocence, I think, that the country experienced much more profoundly than quiz show was this last Congress. If you want to witness carping, shallow, narrow, almost disloyal to their oaths
and a
of
lot of those
office.
people would blame it on the people in your profession, because they would say that people in your profession have made it look like everything is a scam, and their job as holy reporters is always to identify the scam, and that's not completely true either.
Gingrich takes care of him quite neatly himself.
No, okay. What is true is that we're out of time. I'd like to thank a fabulous panel: Paul Stanley, Robert Kennedy Jr., Morley Safer, Heather Richardson, Higgins. See you tomorrow night when my special one-on-one guest will be O.J. Simpson defense team attorney Alan Dershowitz. Thank you, folks.